Laos, February 1968. Night had fallen heavy over the mountains. The Ho Chi Minh Trail, a dark ribbon cut through the jungle, flickered faintly with the glow of truck headlights. Then silence broke. A slow, banking shadow drifted across the sky. An American C-130 gunship, its engines humming low. Inside, a calm voice called out bearings. The crew locked eyes on glowing green screens, and the side hatch opened to reveal a line of cannons. What followed looked unreal. Streams of red tracers stitched across the night, cutting through the forest canopy. Within seconds, entire convoys erupted in flames, each explosion lighting the terrain like a flashbulb. North Vietnamese soldiers who once trusted the cover of night now froze in disbelief. Above them, the AC-130 circled slowly, methodically, turning darkness itself into a weapon. It was America's newest creation, the plane that made the jungle tremble. The question was, how did this flying fortress come to exist, and why did its power redefine nighttime warfare in Vietnam? By the middle of 1967, the Vietnam War had become a struggle of endurance and adaptation. The United States controlled the skies by day, but when darkness fell, the advantage shifted. The North Vietnamese Army and Viet Cong relied on the cover of night to move men, weapons, and supplies down the intricate network of trails that crossed Laos and Cambodia. The Ho Chi Minh Trail. Convoys snaked through the jungle in near-total darkness, guided by moonlight and the occasional dim lamp. Anti-aircraft guns were hidden beneath trees, ready for any low-flying aircraft. For years, American commanders struggled to find a way to strike effectively after sundown. The early attempts, flareships and slow transport planes armed with machine guns, were dangerous, limited, and mostly improvised. But at Eglin Air Force Base in Florida, engineers had begun experimenting with a bold new idea. What if a transport aircraft could circle a target and unleash a steady, precise stream of fire from its side? The concept was called a gunship orbit. If done right, one aircraft could pin down targets below for minutes, even hours, bringing constant pressure that bombers or jets could never sustain. The first version, the AC-47 Spooky, proved it could work. 3 miniguns mounted on a cargo plane provided withering firepower, but its range, visibility, and accuracy were limited. The Air Force needed something faster, stronger, and more advanced, an aircraft that could dominate the night sky and turn jungle supply routes into death traps. That search led to Project Gunship II and the birth of a legend, the AC-130 Spectre. When the first AC-130 prototypes arrived in Southeast Asia in late 1967, the war was shifting gears. The North Vietnamese were expanding their logistics lifeline through Laos, preparing for a massive new offensive. Thousands of trucks carried weapons, rice, and fuel southward every night. American intelligence estimated that up to 8,000 vehicles moved monthly on the trail. Stopping them became a priority, and the Air Force believed the gunship was the answer. Stationed at Ubon Royal Thai Air Base, the newly christened Spectre began night missions under Operation Commando Hunt, a campaign aimed at choking off supplies before they reached South Vietnam. Each sortie was a test of both courage and technology. The gunship orbited at 6,000 feet, side-firing its 20mm Vulcan cannons and 7.62mm miniguns with computer-guided precision. Supporting it from above were electronic eyes, part of Igloo White, a network of sensors hidden along the trail that detected movement and sent signals to aircraft circling miles away. The AC-130 could then swoop in, identify the source through infrared and low-light cameras, and attack within seconds. It was an early example of what the world would later call networked warfare. Night after night, convoys that once rolled unchallenged now vanished in pillars of smoke and flame. Truck drivers told captured comrades that it felt like being hunted by a ghost. There was no warning, only the distant hum of turboprops and the sudden eruption of light. For the United States, the gunship became the embodiment of technological ingenuity. For the North Vietnamese, it was a symbol of something far more haunting: America's ability to turn the darkness itself into an ally. The AC-130 Spectre was not just another aircraft. It was a fusion of precision engineering, sensory dominance, and battlefield adaptation. Every feature served a purpose. On its left side, 3 guns protruded through reinforced windows, 2 20mm Vulcan cannons and a 40mm Bofors. They were mounted to fire downward as the aircraft banked in a slow, counterclockwise orbit. This geometry allowed every round to converge on a single point below, a constant circle of fire. What made it devastating wasn't just the firepower, but the way it found its prey. The Spectre carried an array of sensors never before seen on a combat plane. Its low-light level television system, LLTV, transformed starlight into usable imagery. The infrared scanner could detect engine heat beneath jungle canopy. And then came the Black Crow, a magnetic detector so sensitive it could pick up the spark plug emissions of a moving truck miles away, even through foliage. These systems worked in perfect harmony. The aircraft's analog fire control computer calculated range, wind drift, and bank angle in real time. One sensor operator located the target, the navigator confirmed coordinates, and the gunners unleashed a precise, spiraling wall of fire. The result: destruction from the sky that seemed almost surgical. In the air, the crew of 14 functioned as one machine. Every role, from pilot to sensor operator, was synchronized by training and trust. They called their orbits pylon turns, and each pass meant another convoy erased, another supply line severed. The NVA soon learned that if a Spectre was in the area, no movement was safe after sunset. The jungle had once been their greatest ally. Now it betrayed them, lit up by American technology that could see, hear, and strike in the dark. Inside the AC-130, combat was a mix of tension and teamwork. Every crew member, from the pilot to the sensor technician, knew that one mistake could mean disaster. The gunship's orbit pattern made it predictable, and predictability drew fire. North Vietnamese anti-aircraft gunners quickly learned to track the glowing exhausts of its 4 engines, firing streams of tracers into the night sky. Yet the Spectre crews rarely broke formation. They trusted their altitude, their discipline, and their onboard systems to survive. The missions were long, often lasting 5 to 6 hours and emotionally draining. Over Laos or Cambodia, the terrain was invisible, the targets mere shapes on flickering screens. But when explosions illuminated the jungle below, the reality of their precision became clear. The crew could see trucks exploding one by one, their heat signatures vanishing from the infrared scopes. The radio chatter that followed was calm, professional, and chillingly efficient. For the North Vietnamese, the gunship seemed almost supernatural. Survivors described a sound that began as a low hum and ended in thunder. Some called it the whisper of death. Entire convoys were found burned out along the trail, vehicles cratered but drivers still in their seats, caught mid-movement. Even Soviet and Chinese advisors stationed along the route took note, sending reports about a new American weapon that was, in their words, unmatched in nighttime warfare. The NVA tried everything to counter it: camouflage nets, engine cutoffs, moving in smaller groups, and even building fake trucks out of wood to draw fire. But none of it stopped the losses. For every trick they devised, the Spectre adapted. It became a battle of wits, one side with shadows, the other with sensors. The AC-130 had changed the rules of engagement. And soon it would face its greatest test, when the enemy finally decided to fight back with everything they had. By 1971, Operation Commando Hunt was at its peak. Every night, dozens of American aircraft patrolled the Ho Chi Minh Trail, but none struck fear like the AC-130 Spectre. The gunship's mission was clear: find the trucks, destroy them, and leave nothing moving before dawn. From Ubon Royal Thai Air Base, the Spectres launched into the humid darkness, their turboprops carving quiet circles above Laos. The crews had refined their craft into a near-perfect science. They called it putting steel on target. An infrared operator would whisper, "Contact," and moments later the jungle below would erupt under precise, spiraling fire. During the dry season of Commando Hunt 7, the results were staggering. Air Force logs credited the gunships with destroying or damaging thousands of trucks in a matter of months. Some nights, a single aircraft claimed over 100 kills. Even after accounting for overestimation, common in night operations, the disruption was undeniable. Convoys began avoiding key choke points altogether, leaving weapons stranded in northern Laos. But the price was danger. As American success grew, so did enemy determination. North Vietnamese anti-aircraft batteries began to saturate the route, adding radar-guided weapons and heavy guns. The jungle canopy concealed Soviet-supplied 57mm and 85mm guns, and even SA-2 surface-to-air missiles started appearing near the border. Still, the AC-130s flew on. Crews learned to time their attacks between radar sweeps, using terrain masking and abrupt orbit shifts. Pilots described it as fighting blind with one hand tied, but winning anyway. On those nights, the Ho Chi Minh Trail glowed like a scar, every bend marked by fire and wreckage. American engineers back home analyzed film from the infrared cameras, seeing patterns of destruction that proved the concept. Precision air power could control the night. But the North Vietnamese weren't finished. What came next would test the courage of every Spectre crew that dared to circle above the flames. By early 1972, the enemy's patience snapped. The People's Army of Vietnam, preparing for the Easter Offensive, decided the AC-130 had to be eliminated at any cost. Along the Laotian border, Soviet radar teams helped position new SA-2 guideline surface-to-air missiles and mobile gun batteries. The once invincible Spectres were about to face their deadliest trial. On the night of January 10, 1972, an AC-130 named Spectre 07 took off from Ubin for its usual patrol over Paxi, Laos. The crew had flown the same orbit dozens of times, confident, experienced, and well aware of the risk. Below them, NVA convoys crept forward, headlights blacked out, guided only by memory and moonlight. Just before midnight, the Black Crow sensor chirped, "Trucks ahead." The pilot began his slow, banking circle, weapons tracking, targeting computers humming. The first bursts from the 40mm cannon tore through the trees, and explosions dotted the jungle road. But as the Spectre made its next turn, something streaked upward through the darkness. A Soviet-built SA-2 missile. The crew had seconds to react. The pilot rolled hard, breaking the orbit while the navigator called evasive turns. The missile missed, detonating behind the plane, but the shockwave rattled every rivet in its fuselage. Then came another and another. That night marked the first time surface-to-air missiles had been fired at an American gunship over Laos. Though Spectre 07 limped home safely, the message was clear: the enemy had adapted. Later missions grew even deadlier. On March 29, 1972, another gunship, Spectre 03, was hit by a missile over Paxi and lost with all 14 crewmen. It was one of the darkest nights in the history of Air Force Special Operations. Yet even that loss did not ground the Spectres. Within hours, another crew volunteered to take the same route. Their reasoning was simple: if they stopped flying, the NVA would move freely again. The mission had become more than strategy, it was duty. That defiance turned the AC-130 into something greater than a weapon. It became a symbol of American resolve, proof that even under fire, the United States would never surrender control of the night. When the dry season of 1972 ended, the records from Operation Commando Hunt told a story few could believe. The U.S. Air Force claimed more than 10,000 trucks destroyed or damaged along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Even with later corrections reducing inflated counts, analysts agreed that the campaign had dealt a severe blow to North Vietnamese logistics. Interdiction wasn't absolute, but it forced the enemy to pay dearly for every ton of supplies that reached the south. Convoy movement times tripled. Repair crews worked by hand under the constant threat of air attack. Roads once crowded with trucks became graveyards of twisted steel and charred rubber. The NVA's own reports captured after the war admitted to significant transportation losses during the Spectre's most active periods. Yet beyond statistics, the gunship's effect was psychological. American pilots, once vulnerable after dusk, now owned the night. Infantry units and special forces teams operating along the border reported that hearing the distant hum of an AC-130 brought a strange sense of calm. They called it their guardian angel. At the same time, even senior Air Force officers recognized the limits of the strategy. No amount of aerial power could fully sever the Ho Chi Minh Trail. The enemy's determination to rebuild faster than America could destroy remained unshaken. But as a demonstration of precision, endurance, and courage, nothing compared to the AC-130. Had rewritten the manual of close air support, transforming a lumbering transport aircraft into one of the most feared night predators in modern warfare. In the months that followed, engineers and aircrews pushed the Spectre even further. The early models, armed with miniguns and Vulcans, evolved into the surprise package, the AC-130E. It carried the heavier 40mm Bofors cannon, giving the gunship range and punch no enemy convoy could survive. By late 1972, another transformation arrived, the AC-130U. Fitted with advanced radar, upgraded sensors, and eventually a 105mm howitzer, it could engage targets from miles away with terrifying accuracy. This version would become the blueprint for all future American gunships, a design so effective that it still flies today in conflicts across the world. Even after the United States withdrew from Vietnam, the lessons of the Spectre endured. The aircraft had proven that control of the night was not a matter of numbers, but of innovation. Combining sensors, firepower, and human discipline, it represented the essence of American adaptability, turning a transport plane into a flying fortress. Decades later, during operations in Grenada, Panama, Iraq, and Afghanistan, the descendants of those first Vietnam-era crews still flew under the same call sign, Spectre. Their presence meant that somewhere below, someone would soon look up and see a circle of red tracers carving through the dark, a reminder that the legend born over Laos never really faded. The war in Vietnam may not have been won, but the Spectre's legacy was victory of another kind. A triumph of courage and engineering that reshaped the very idea of air dominance. In the end, the story of the AC-130 Spectre was not about a single aircraft. It was about what human ingenuity can achieve when necessity demands the impossible. In the jungles of Southeast Asia, American airmen faced a war without front lines, fought in darkness, against an enemy that vanished with the dawn. And yet, through patience, precision, and courage, they transformed that darkness into their greatest weapon. Every mission the Spectre flew proved a quiet truth about the Vietnam War. That technology alone never wins a battle. It is the will behind it that matters. Crews risked their lives night after night, knowing that the smallest misstep could turn their orbit into a fiery spiral. But they flew anyway. They believed in protecting those on the ground, in striking with accuracy rather than chaos, and in mastering the conditions that once defined defeat. Though history remembers the Vietnam War as a conflict America did not win, it also remembers the moments of brilliance that defined its fighting spirit. The AC-130 was one of those moments, a weapon that made the impossible possible, a machine that gave the night back to those who dared to fly through it. Even today, when a modern gunship circles silently above distant battlefields, its lineage is clear. The world learned long ago, as the North Vietnamese once did, that when the Spectre prowls the darkness, the night belongs to America.